There is a story the human race has been telling itself for as long as it has been able to tell stories. And it is a strange kind of confession disguised as an accusation. The story says that inside every civilized person there sleeps an animal. By day we are held in check, dressed, mannered, lawful, watched by the eyes of others and by the eye of the law. And under that discipline we behave, but strip away the watching. Put out the lights, remove the social gaze that keeps us honest, and the animal wakes. The veneer cracks. The beast that civilization only ever contained, never abolished, comes up out of the dark and does what beasts do. This is one of the most durable pictures we have of ourselves. And the series From seems at first to be its perfect dramatization. The creatures live by day in the tunnels beneath the town, out of sight. They emerge only at night, out of the woods, into the dark, where no daylight and no ordinary human order can reach them. And there they become what they are. Predators, hunters of flesh. Two behaviors then, cleanly divided. One social, contained, presentable. One intimate, released, savage. The daylight self and the night self. It is tempting. And I want to give the temptation its full due before I argue that the series, examined carefully, tells us the opposite, and that the opposite is far more frightening. The philosophical pedigree of the tempting reading is long and serious, and it is worth laying out because it is not a naive idea. Its oldest and sharpest formulation is in the second book of Plato's Republic, where Glaucon tells the story of the ring of Gyges, a ring that makes its wearer invisible. Glaucon's challenge to Socrates is devastating in its simplicity. Give that ring to a just man and to an unjust man, he says, and watch what happens. Because once a man believes he cannot be seen, once the social gaze is lifted from him entirely, he will do whatever he pleases, take whatever he wants, and the just man will behave no differently from the unjust. Which proves, Glaucon argues, that no one is just willingly, that justice is only ever a performance staged for an audience, and that the true self, the self that acts when unobserved, is a creature of pure appetite. The night in From is the ring of Gyges made collective and permanent. It is the condition of not being seen, and under it, the tempting reading says, the true human self stands revealed. The same suspicion runs through Thomas Hobbes, for whom the human being outside the restraining power of the sovereign is a wolf to other humans, and the peace of society is only the fear-bought suppression of a war of all against all that never truly ends, only sleeps. It runs through Freud, for whom civilization itself is a structure of repression, a lid held down by force over the drives, so that every ordered society is purchased at the cost of a permanent discontent, the instinct never satisfied, only policed. And it runs through the whole popular mythology that descends from these ideas, through Jekyll drinking his potion to let Hyde out, through the schoolboys of Lord of the Flies reverting to savagery the moment the adult world is removed, through every werewolf who is a decent man until the moon rises. The picture is always the same. The human is a civilized surface over an animal depth, and darkness is what lets the depth come up. From appears to confirm this so exactly that one could almost accuse it of being a simple illustration of it. And yet, the moment you look closely at what the creatures actually do, at the specific texture of their predation, the reading begins to come apart. And it comes apart at precisely the point where it should be strongest. Because the beast, the true animal, is not persuasive. This is the detail on which everything turns, and the series presses on it relentlessly. A predator in nature does not talk to you. A wolf does not stand at your window in the shape of your grandmother and call you by the name only your family used. A lion does not know the private grief you have never spoken aloud and use it gently, patiently, to coax you toward the door. But this is exactly what the creatures of From do. They do not fall upon their prey with animal directness. They persuade. They impersonate the dead. They wear the faces of the ones you loved and lost. They deploy intimate knowledge, names, histories, secret sorrows, with the precision of a confidence artist. And they use it to win the one thing they need, which is your consent, your trust, the opening of the door from the inside. And these faculties, the ones the creatures actually use to kill, are not animal faculties at all. Language is not animal. Deception on this scale is not animal. The simulation of tenderness, the theatrical performance of a benevolence one does not feel, the exploitation of another being's memory and love as a weapon against them. These are the very faculties we have always pointed to as the marks of the human, the things that supposedly lift us above the beast. The creatures do not hunt with tooth and claw, suppressed by day and freed by night. They hunt with courtesy. They hunt with charm. They hunt with the whole apparatus of civilized sociality turned into a lure. This inverts the tempting metaphor at its root. The classic picture puts the social surface on the outside and the animal appetite at the core, and imagines the night as the moment the surface cracks and the core shows through. From reverses the layers. Yes, there is something appetitive, something that wants to open your chest and take what is inside at the center of these creatures. But the shell around that appetite is not a thin veneer of manners waiting to crack. The shell is hypersocial, more social than any real person, a performance of warmth and familiarity so total that it is itself the deadliest thing about them. And it is the shell that kills. The flesh-eating, when it finally comes, when the smile drops and the gray skin and the jagged teeth appear, is almost a relief, because it is at last honest. The unbearable part, the genuinely uncanny part, is everything that comes before it. The part where the monster is being kind. This is why the series dresses them the way it does, in the costumes of a 1950s American innocence, the milkman, the nurse, the cheerful waitress, the bride. The horror is not that the beast breaks through the wholesome image. The horror is that the wholesome image is the weapon. The creator of the series reduced it to 5 words. That they come at you smiling. And the smile is not the mask that will fall to reveal the monster. The smile is the monster. It is the most social thing about them and the most lethal. And no account of them as the animal beneath the man can explain why the thing that finally destroys you is not a snarl, but a grin. And then the series does something that closes off the animal reading entirely, and it does it with a single revelation that arrives late and reorganizes everything behind it. We learn where the creatures came from. They were not always monsters, and they were never animals. They were the town's original human inhabitants, and they became what they are through an act. A specific, deliberate, monstrous act. They sacrificed their own children, the children the series names the Ang-Kue, in exchange for a promise of eternal life. Stop and consider what this does to the 2 behaviors we began with, because it does not refine the animal reading. It demolishes it. If the creatures were simply the beast released, they would be timeless, a fact of the species, the same appetite that has slept in every human since the beginning. But they are not timeless. They were made, And they were made by a choice, and it is the nature of that choice that matters more than anything else in the series. An animal does not sacrifice its offspring for immortality. It cannot, and not because it is too moral, but because it is not capable of the thought. The animal does not know that it will die. It does not lie awake with the knowledge of its own finitude and bargain against it. The dream of not dying, the willingness to trade anything, even one's children, even the future itself, to escape the fact of ending, is not an animal impulse breaking through the human surface. It is the most exclusively human capacity there is, available only to a creature cursed with the foreknowledge of its own death. What the creatures embody, then, is not the beast in the man. It is the part of the human that no animal shares. Here, the great correction to the whole tradition becomes visible, and it was made most rigorously not by a horror writer, but by Immanuel Kant, in his account of what he called radical evil. Kant asks where human evil actually comes from, and he rejects flatly the answer that our tradition finds most comforting, the answer that evil is our animality, the leftover beast, the drives we have not yet fully tamed. That answer is a consolation, Kant argues, and it is false, because our animal nature, our appetites and instincts as such, is morally neutral. A hungry body, a frightened body, a desiring body, is not evil. Evil requires something the animal does not have. It requires freedom. It requires a will that can survey the moral law and the claims of its own self-love, and freely choose to subordinate the one to the other, to place its own persistence, its own advantage, its own survival, above everything it knows it ought not to. Evil, for Kant, is not beneath our humanity. It is inside our freedom. It is a distinctly human achievement, because only a free and rational being can commit it. And this is exactly what the creatures of From are. They are not a lapse into animality. They are the exercise of the most human faculty of all, the free will, turned toward the most human of all terrors, the fear of death, and choosing freely to devour the future rather than to end. Their monstrousness is not a failure of their humanity. It is a possibility contained within it. This is why the smile fits them so perfectly, and the snarl does not. The snarl would say, "I am the beast you always feared was inside you." The smile says something far worse. It says, "I am what you are, and I made a choice you might make too. So let me return to the two behaviors, because your original intuition, the daylight self and the night self, the exposed and the hidden, was not wrong. It was exactly right about the structure. What it had wrong was the content of the hidden. The night does release something in these creatures that the day contains, but what it releases is not the animal. It is the calculation. The night is the ring of Gyges, the condition of not being seen. And Glaucon was half right about what the ring reveals, because it does reveal something we hide under the social gaze. But it is not the beast we hide. What the gaze of others shames us into concealing is not our appetite. Appetite is not shameful, and everyone knows we have it. What we hide is the cold arithmetic of self-preservation, the willingness, which almost none of us will confess in daylight, to save ourselves at the expense of others, to purchase our own continuation with someone else's ending, to place our survival above the future, above the children, above everything. If only we were certain no one would ever know. That is the thing the dark lets out. Not the wolf. The accountant of the self. Nietzsche titled a book Human, All Too Human, and the phrase names precisely this. that the deepest cruelties are not the eruption of the subhuman, but the expression of the all-too-human, the specifically human capacity to reason our way to atrocity, to justify it, to dress it in a smile. Kioran, writing in the same lineage, called the human the sick animal, the one that went wrong, the creature in whom consciousness became a wound, and argued that our species is capable of horrors no merely natural being could conceive precisely because we are the ones who know we die and cannot bear it. The creatures of From are that idea given flesh. They are what the fear of death makes of a free and knowing being when it is finally released from the one thing that restrains it, which is not conscience, but observation, the sense of being seen. And once you hold the reading at this level, it opens onto a larger frame than the individual soul, because a civilization is also a thing with a daylight face and a nocturnal appetite. If the creatures are human beings who purchased their own permanence with the blood of their children, then they are an allegory not only of the divided person, but of any order that perpetuates itself by consuming the generation that comes after it. And now, the costume becomes sharper still, almost unbearable, because the image the creatures wear, the wholesome American 1950s, the milkman and the manicured lawn and the smiling family, is itself a historical daylight face, an image of prosperity and innocence that was built as all such images are. Over exclusions and violences, it preferred not to see a good life that smiled over the things it fed on. The creatures are the return of that repressed at the level of the civilization, the order that is luminous and lawful and orderly by day, and that, in a darkness it will not admit to having, devours the very future it claims to be protecting. We do this ecologically, spending the world our children will inherit to preserve our present comfort. We do it economically, we do it morally, we do it whenever a settled order chooses its own continuation over the ones who come next. The metaphor of the two behaviors works, as the best metaphors do, on both scales at once. The person who hides the beast and the society that hides its founding crime. And the series is at its most powerful when we refuse to choose between them, when we let the smiling figure walking out of the woods be both the individual will to survive at any price, and the collective one, both the man and the order, both wearing the same gentle face over the same devouring. So here is where the argument comes to rest, and it is a darker place than the one we started from, which is how you can tell it is closer to the truth. Keep the two behaviors. Keep the daylight self, governed by law and by the gaze of others, and the night self, released when the gaze is lifted. That structure is real, and the series dramatizes it with terrible clarity. But do not call the night self the animal, and do not call what the dark releases the beast within, because that is the oldest consolation we have, the lie that lets us disown our own worst possibilities by attributing them to a nature we share with wolves. What the dark releases in the creatures of From is not the beast beneath the human. It is the human beneath the courtesy, the free choice beneath the manners, the calculation of survival at any cost beneath the smile. A horror that no animal could commit because no animal knows enough to want it. The creatures are not proof that we are animals pretending to be people. They are proof that only people are capable of what they do. And worse, that only people could do it while smiling, could wear the whole warm apparatus of human kindness as the instrument of the crime. That is the final meaning of the smile, and it is why it will not leave you after the episode ends. The snarl would tell you the monster is other than you. The smile tells you it is not. It tells you that the thing walking slowly toward you out of the woods, wearing a kind face and calling you by name, is not the animal you feared was hidden inside the human. It is the human, hidden inside the kindness. And it is only waiting for the lights to go out and for no one to be watching. Where art does not console, it autopsies.